All right, we're live. Welcome those who are joining. We'll get started in a few minutes as usual, waiting for people to come on in. Say hello in the chat and tell me how voice and video are coming in through to you. Hello, John and Audrey. John, it's coming close to time. That time is Morning Monastery Experience. I'm leaving here June 11th. So during the time I'm going to be at Ayasu Dhammas, I'm going to be doing Morning Monastery Experience. And also we're going to see about people coming live to the, anybody who wants to come live to the monastery to do Morning Monastery Experience will also be able to come. So I'm going to invite the people in North Carolina to come if they like. And then probably for the Vasa, I'll be able to continue Morning Monastery Experience as well. So after a long hiatus of 3 months now or so, Morning Monastery Experience will be back. MMA in North Carolina. That's a funny typo. I like that one. Hello, everybody joining in. Please say hello in the chat. We'll give it a few minutes to get started before for people to come in before we get started. Hey, Randy. Randy is a new friend from Colorado who's helping me make connections and things like that. Good to see you on here with us, Randy. Hello, Bella and Gautam and Mariah. Bella and Gautam, you missed. I was telling John about how Morning Monastery Experience is starting up again, sometime in the middle of June. Because I'll be going to Ayasu Dhamma's place June 11th. So somewhere's around there, maybe 13th or so, we'll get started with Morning Monastery Experience again. And for those of you who are wondering what the heck I'm talking about, Morning Monastery Experience is the live stream I do every morning, Monday through Friday at 8 a.m. New York time. When I'm in a place I can do it, which I haven't been for a while. So this is a half-hour session where we do, it's called Morning Monastery Experience because it's literally giving a person the kind of the experience of, the puja in the morning at Bhavana, which is also not very different than most places. So there's precepts, some chanting, and a little Dhamma talk, a little thought of the day, as we used to call it at Bhavana. So I'm sure they still call it that at Bhavana. I haven't been back in some years, so I don't know, but I doubt that it's changed. But that's what it is. So I'm offering, if you're on the East Coast, it's right before you go to work. So it's kind of perfect, like, right before a thing. If you're in Colorado or California, it's a bit earlier in the morning. So, and I usually do that Monday through Friday on this channel here. Hello, Yankee. All right, so we got about 30 seconds or so and we'll get started. Let me share the screen for us to do some chanting. Share the Maggaseka chanting book. We'll do some dependent origination and dependent cessation for this introductory chant. All right. Namo tassa bhagavato arahato samma sambuddhassa. Namo tassa bhagavato arahato samma sambuddhassa. Namo tassa bhagavato arahato samma sambuddhassa. Avidya paccaya sankara sankara paccaya vinyanang vinyana paccaya nama rupang nama rupa paccaya salayatanang salayatana paccaya passo passa paccaya vedana vedana paccaya tanha tanha paccaya upadanang upadana paccaya bhavo bhava paccaya jati jati paccaya jara maranang soka parideva dukkha domanasupayassa sambhavanti evametassa kevalassa dukkha kandassa samudayo hoti. Patiloma. Avidyaya tveva sesa viraga niroda sankara nirodo sankara niroda vinyana nirodo vinyana niroda namarupa nirodo namarupa niroda salayatana nirodo salayatana niroda passa nirodo passa niroda vedana nirodo Vedana niroda tanha nirodo tanha niroda upadana nirodo upadana niroda bhava nirodo bhava niroda jati nirodo jati niroda jara maranang soka parideva dukkha domanasupayassa nirujjanti Evametassa kevalassa dukkha kandassa nirodo hoti. All right, English. Dependent origination. The arising of the wheel of existence. Dependent on ignorance, volitional formations arise. Dependent on volitional formations, consciousness arises. Dependent on consciousness, mentality and materiality arise. Dependent on mentality and materiality, the sixfold base arises. Dependent on the sixfold base, contact arises. Dependent on contact, feeling arises. Dependent on feeling, craving arises. Dependent on craving, clinging arises. Dependent on clinging, becoming arises. Dependent on becoming, birth arises. Dependent on birth, aging and death arise. And sorrow, lamentation, pain, grief, and despair. Thus there is the arising of this whole mass of suffering. The cessation of the wheel of existence. Through the entire cessation of this ignorance, volitional formations cease. Through the cessation of volitional formations, consciousness ceases. Through the cessation of consciousness, mentality and materiality cease. Through the cessation of mentality and materiality, the sixfold base ceases. Through the cessation of the sixfold base, contact ceases. Through the cessation of contact, feeling ceases. Through the cessation of feeling, craving ceases. Through the cessation of craving, clinging ceases. Through the cessation of clinging, becoming ceases. Through the cessation of becoming, birth ceases. Through the cessation of birth, aging and death cease. And sorrow, lamentation, pain, grief, and despair. Thus there is the cessation of this whole mass of suffering. All right. So this is very important, as we see here, just as in most of the suttas, dependent origination is almost never taught about without also talking about dependent cessation. You don't hear too many teachers talk about dependent cessation a lot, do you? I don't know. It's an interesting thing, but I find dependent cessation to be the best part of dependent because people can say, "Oh, this is such a a really depressing doctrine." All these things. It's Buddhism is so negative and so depressing. That's because they just don't know about dependent cessation. When you can cease your suffering, then that's a very positive thing. All right, friends. Well, it is Monday night. That means it is time for another 2-hour festival of Dhamma with the Maggaseka community, Dhammapalooza. During this 2-hour festival of Dhamma, we will do a variety of different Dhamma related activities. We've done some chanting. Later on, we'll do some meditation. And in between, who knows? We'll see what happens. We could read suttas. There could be lots of questions. There could be requests for a Dhamma talk of a certain topic. There's all kinds of things that can happen. And this is always up in the air when we first start because it's dependent on the community, right? This is always, I always have a sutta in my back pocket if nobody has anything, any suggestions. But this is now the time. If you have a question you'd like me to answer, if you have a topic you'd like me to discuss, you can put that in the chat. We also have some friends with us in the here at the monastery with me, so they can also engage in that. But I'll give the a couple minutes to see if anything comes up in the chat, and if nothing, then we'll read a sutta. I have a really important, famous sutta on deck for us. If nobody has anything, let's see. Hello, Visaka, Elaine, with her granddaughter here. Hello, Isla. We'll just give it some time to see if the chat comes up with anything. And if nothing, then we'll move forward. Last couple Paloozas have been very sutta heavy, probably because it's been small groups. And today is a holiday after all. So we'll see what happens. Are there any questions from either of you? Anything you'd like me to discuss or answer? Don't need to think of anything if nothing arises, because we'll read a sutta. But I'm giving you the chance just in case. Yes. So for those of you who might know, Amy W, who's part of the Mugasega community, she's on streams with us and on the Discord. She's here with us and at Empty Cloud. So mhm. Mariah says hello, Amy. I think you've both been on Sutas Monday together. Yeah. Amy says hello, Mariah. So Amy's question was about the relationship between consciousness, vijnana, and namarupa. This is a really interesting relationship. And this also kind of points to something a little bit deeper than, because what happens, what most people tend to do is what most people tend to do is take the kind of dependent origination list and get really hung up on the linearity of it. Right? They have, okay, I got to remember forward and backwards. This. Um, and that's okay. But what really dependent origination is, um, goes a little bit deeper than that. It's a bit more complicated. As I say fairly often, dependent origination, dependent cessation is when this arises, that arises. When this ceases, that ceases. And so, yeah, you have multiple suttas where you see that the normal list of first arises consciousness, then arises name and form. But then you go to a sutta in the Samyutta Nikaya, and the Buddha says how consciousness and name and form cannot exist without each other. They basically support each other. So that can be very confusing. You have to kind of allow yourself to not get too rigid on the list itself, because this is one of those things where, sure, yes, the Buddha does, in the 12, the Buddha does put consciousness first, but then on the same breath, he also says that Namarupa can't arise without consciousness. And so we can just kind of accept that. Okay, so these two kind of essentially, maybe you might say, different people explain this differently. I don't know what the commentary might say on it. Maybe you might say, well, consciousness arises a split quarter second first or whatever. I don't know. I've actually never heard anybody say this. Um, like, I've never heard Bante G talk about, because it's the first on the list that it goes first. No, I think it's just quite clear that they both are kind of conjoined at the hip. They're both, one can't exist without the other. So in essence, they arise together. Right? They're like two sticks that kind of lean on each other. And when one falls, they both fall. So, and this of course also makes sense because the Buddha connects consciousness. When the Buddha is asked, what is consciousness? He says there's eye consciousness, ear consciousness, nose consciousness, tongue consciousness, body consciousness, mind consciousness. Namarupa is this psychophysical organism, this mind and body. The Buddha does not really talk about consciousness outside of this mind and body. That's an important thing to understand. It can get quite complicated, and the consciousness is a hard problem in modern science. It's also a hard problem for people to kind of wrap their head around. Although the Buddha, again, does not go into like ridiculous details about it. 9 times out of 10, when asked what consciousness is, he says eye consciousness, ear consciousness, nose consciousness, tongue consciousness, etc. So the Buddha also tells us that our senses are the all. Our senses are the world. Buddha says he does not teach any other world. Because all we can experience is just wrapped up in this body and these senses. That's all we can really experience. So the Buddha is keeping us focused in on this part of our experience, this mind, this body. And to be able to understand and to have experiences, we need consciousness. We need to be awake and aware. So it's not a surprise that the Buddha connects consciousness with the senses. So they come together. Both nama, which is usually connected to mental processes, and rupa, which is connected to the body, which is talking about the body, they come together with consciousness due to our ignorance and our mental creation and choices, our sankharas. So Elaine has a really interesting and complicated stuff. Um, and then Mariah also wants to get into consciousness. So it looks like consciousness is a topic for today. All right. So Visaka is saying this is an interesting thing because when you are dealing with the realities of life, you question things. So I'm not surprised that Elaine would have these questions. So my close encounter with death and serious illness over the past 2 years has really let me rethink this whole rebirth issue. I find myself leaning towards Christianity. Were you raised Christian, Visaka? I don't remember if I know um, your childhood religion or non-religion experience. I find myself leaning towards Christianity because I want to be saved. I say this because I feel hostage to the randomness of ah. That is hoping that my good karma will ripen at exactly the right time so I can get a good rebirth. Any thoughts on this? All right. Yeah. No. Okay. So your mind is like, well, even let's even take it this way. Suppose all religious afterlives are real. Suppose we'll take it supposing this, and you can choose between, well, I do good and I go to a heavenly realm forever, I'll be saved, or I do good, and if I don't, at least become a stream enter, I can maybe still go to a hell realm. Alright, so that's what your mind is thinking. Your mind is like, "I don't know about this karma thing. I wanna, like, go to heaven in this after I die." So, it's quite natural that your mind is kind of, you know, examining its choices. This is the case. So that to me, that seems like what your mind is doing. But with Buddhism, with karma, we have to take a long term view, and by long term, I don't mean 60 years. I mean like 60 billion years. Right? The Buddhism, you take that long term view of you don't know what your next life is going to be. But that is not why that's not the reason why you're practicing the Noble Eightfold Path in this life, or at least it shouldn't be. Because you're right, there's no guarantee that your next life will be a heavenly realm. It could be a hell realm. There- you kind of have to accept that that's the case. You reflect, well, I mean, I've been there before. I've been to all the realms before. If Buddhism is true, and read this whole rebirth thing is the reality of things. Well, I've been there and I've done it all, and so maybe I have to go back again. But it's impermanent. So after a time, I'll come back as a human. Right? So it's the perspective of taking the longer view and an acceptance of the fact that you're stuck in this samsaric state, right? You're stuck in this wild safari world of life to life, and you don't know what your next life is going to be. Nobody does, right? So I would say that's probably where your mind is going, right? Your mind is kind of hedging its bets, as it were. It's like, well, I mean, I like this whole Buddhism thing, but it would be much easier if there was just an eternal heaven, and then after that, I just go to heaven and I'll be done. It really would. I mean, like, this is why I talk about how Buddhism, like, the concept of samsara is way worse, in my opinion, than even necessarily like an eternal hell in many ways. Because it's like, I mean, the only thing that makes it better is that you can actually end your samsara journey. But you're just kind of going at the whims of your past karma, just stuck in this roller coaster. It's not a surprise that there are some people that just get to the point of their wisdom and they're like, I need to get the heck off this roller coaster. Why am I doing this again? Or even like me, like, I mean, I can't say like, oh, I remember that past life. Why am I doing this all over again? But I can say is like, I mean, I can't really complain too much about my life, but I sure as hell wouldn't want to do it again. And it could be way worse. So how about I try not to come back again? I think that's the best bet. So it's nobody can tell you what your spiritual path and what your views are, but you have to kind of see, you know, what works the best for you. You are coming to end of life. I mean, obviously that means that could be 10 years from now. This is part of your journey. Zaka says, I don't want to go back to hell. I've had enough. Yeah, me too. Well, I mean, if I don't become at least a stream enter in this life, I could be in with King Yama in the next life. But at least this time I can say I saw the divine messengers, buddy. I saw it this past life. I didn't see it when I created the comma that I'm with you now. But this past life I saw it. All right. Mariah says, can you talk about the chitta? I've heard it's different from consciousness, but I don't quite understand what chitta is. So the Buddha talks about when the Buddha talks about mind, he uses three words. And in many ways, he uses them interchangeably. Um, and some would say that they're synonymous with each other. Even still, they do have different valences. They have different meanings. Um, so it would be mano, chitta, and vijnana. Vijnana is consciousness, right? Just as we've been talking about. Mano is the aspect of mind that's the rational, intellectual aspect of the mind. And chitta is the aspect of mind that is the emotive, the emotional aspect of mind. This is why the Thai forests, when they translate chitta, they translate it as heart. Um, they really mean the mind. I mean, it's not really talking about the heart, but it's this kind of perception, like the emotions are in the heart, kind of a thing. Um, so these three words, kind of together, are the three aspects of the mind. I think that's probably the easiest way to understand it. Right? And again, they also do. I would say in the suttas, my understanding is that the Buddha uses chitta probably more than mano and vijnana. So I would say chitta is probably used more of the three words, but which is why you see heart all over the place, like in Bhante Sujato's translation. Uh, but those three words are synonyms and also aspects of the mind. I think that's the best way to understand chitta, the three, and chitta in terms of the Pali and the suttas. And if you have any other clarifications on it that you'd like me to make, you can say so in the chat. I have heard that the chitta knows and directs consciousness and is separate from it. Is that only a Thai forest teaching? Well, I mean, I don't know only because, like, I don't know Burmese teaching, but it's definitely a Thai forest teaching. This is not how things are talked about in the suttas. This is not an early text thing for certain. Um, yeah, this is why when I talk about a good chunk of Thai forest has that kind of mix of Mahayana and kind of views of things that kind of goes off the rails a little bit. Um, but it's very, very common part of the Thai forest tradition. Um, you know, so many Thai forest monastics, you hear that talk about, oh, the chitta, the heart, this, the heart, that. That's a very common way of discussing it. Honestly, when they start talking like that, half the time I kind of have to like translate in my mind to early text. I'm like, does what they're saying make sense in terms like can I understand what they're saying? Sometimes yes, I can. I was like, oh, okay, I get it. It's just, it's a matter of words. And sometimes I don't know. That's just the nature of things. All right. Well, we're at the end of chat here. Why don't we read a sutta? We shall read the Great 40. That's Majjhima Nikaya number 117. The sutta right before Anapanasati Sutta. Let me share the screen. All right. Where is it? There it is. Okay. I'm just going to get some water. It's a very famous, very well known sutta. And it's a bit long. So we'll see if we make it through. Um, At one time, the Buddha was staying near Savatthi in Jeta's Grove, Anathapindika's monastery. There, the Buddha addressed the mendicants. Mendicants, venerable sir, they replied. The Buddha said this: Mendicants, I will teach you noble right immersion. So this is Samma Samadhi. Like this the eighth factor of the Noble Eightfold Path. Um, with its vital conditions and prerequisites. So there you see here, Samma Samadhi. Listen and pay close attention. I will speak. Remember, Samma Samadhi is jhanas, the first four jhanas. Ah, hello, Metika. Welcome. Yes, sir, they reply. And what is noble, right immersion with its vital conditions and its prerequisites? They are right view, right thought, right speech, right action, right livelihood, right effort, and right mindfulness. Unification of mind with these seven factors as prerequisites is called noble right immersion with its vital conditions and also with its prerequisites. So let's take some time to understand this here. The eighth factor of the Noble Eightfold Path is supported by all the other seven factors of the path. This is why you'll see, what some people will say that somebody who is like an evil person who does a lot of bad deeds cannot get into jhanas. I don't know if that's 100% true per se, because there is such a thing as mitya samadhi. There's such a thing as wrong samadhi. But what they will never be able to get into is samma samadhi. This is right Buddhist samadhi, right? Because this is samma samadhi that is supported by all the other factors. What is it supported by? Right view, right intention, right action, right speech, right livelihood, right? All of these, the sila, right mindfulness, right effort, and right mindfulness, satipatthana, the four foundations of mindfulness. So all of these practices are done um, before or in addition to sitting down and following your breath to get jhana. All of these practices are what support your deep samma samadhi. This is why, um, many kind of Western converts who come to Buddhism and they don't want to hear about all the other factors and like sila and things like that. They just want to get into meditation. This is why they will often not get very, very far. Usually, it's a feedback loop, though. Usually, what will happen is as they try to meditate, they'll get some benefit and they will then realize that, yeah, they should probably start developing their sila. They should probably start developing their mindfulness. And then that feedback just grows and grows and grows and grows. And then they're doing the Noble Eightfold Path. So let's continue on. In this context, so the context of all of the other factors supporting the eighth, right view comes first. And how does right view come first? When you understand wrong view as wrong view and right view as right view, that's your right view. So you know what is wrong and you know what is right. And I don't mean like, I mean, yes, also like see a like, oh, this is wrong to do this, this is right to do this. But I mean in terms of like views. Right? The Buddha lists a bunch of views. So here we'll have the Buddha will list some views here that and what is wrong view? There is no meaning in giving. Right? So practicing generosity, nothing, there's no meaning in it, there's no purpose behind it, nothing comes of it. That's what a lot of basically the view of a lot of these that are going to be listed is. There's no meaning in giving, sacrifice, or offering. And of course, sacrifice and offerings here, the Buddha's not talking about sacrificing animals and things like that. This is like giving. Giving is sacrifice. This is a sacrifice of trying, choosing not to engage in something or to give something away. It's sacrifice. There's no fruit or result of good and bad deeds. Meaning, yeah, you can do whatever you want. This is the Jivaka position. The Buddha does not like the It says like he says that somebody having this view, they understand that they could go up and down the Ganges, slaying beings until there's nothing left but huge piles of dead bodies, and nothing would come. The Buddha tells us the opposite, right? The five subjects for contemplation. What's the fifth? I'm the owner of my actions. And so the Buddha comes out very strongly against this perspective in multiple places in the suttas. There's no afterlife. So this would be, if I'm not mistaken, this is normally translated as there's no other world, like devas, nagas, etc. No other realm. There's no such thing as mother and father, meaning like there's no need or no point in having gratitude towards your parents or taking care of them or anything, or beings that are reborn spontaneously. And there's no ascetic or Brahmin who is well attained in practice, so no awakened beings, and who describes the afterlife after realizing it with their own insight. This all is wrong view. Just gonna check the chat here, see, okay, nothing going on in the chat, so didn't miss anything. Continue on. What is right view? Right view is twofold, I say. There is right view that is accompanied by defilements, has the attributes of good deeds, and ripens in attachment. And there is right view that is noble, undefiled, transcendent, a factor of the path. What is right view that is accompanied by defilements, has the attributes of good deeds, and ripens in attachment? There is meaning in giving, sacrifice, and offerings. So this is the opposite of the wrong view there. There are fruits and results of good and bad deeds. There is an afterlife. There are such things as mother and father and beings that are reborn spontaneously. There are ascetics and Brahmins who are well attained in practice and who describe the afterlife after realizing it with their own insight. This is the right view that is accompanied by defilements as attributes of good deeds and ripens in attachment. And what is right view that is noble, undefiled, transcendent, and a factor of the path? It's the wisdom, the faculty of wisdom, the power of wisdom, the awakening factor of investigation of principle. That's the second awakening factor after mindfulness. And right view as a factor of the path. And one of noble mind and undefiled mind who possesses the noble path and develops the noble path. This is called right view, undefiled, transcendent, a factor of the path. So if anybody has any clarifications or anything, you can always type it in the chat. Hello, Hawk. Welcome. So you see here that having these views, the previous views, right? There's meaning, etc. This is right view, but it's accompanied by defilement, so it's not purified. Right? This is not an awakened being's right. And then there's right view that is noble, undefiled, and this is the power of wisdom, awakening factor of investigation. So these are the two differences. They make an effort to give up wrong view and embrace right view. This is their right effort. Mindfully, they give up wrong view and take up right view. That's their right mindfulness. These three things keep running and circling around, namely, around right view, right effort, and right mindfulness. In this context, right view comes first. And how does right view come first? When you understand wrong thought as wrong thought and right thought as right thought, that is your right view. So this is the second factor of awake, second noble. Second, boy, this is the second of the noble eightfold path. This is samma sankappa. Wrong, correct or right thought or intention. And what is wrong thought? Thoughts of sensuality, of malice, of cruelty. This is wrong thought. And what is right thought? Right thought is twofold, I say. So it's the same framework that we've been going through. There is right thought that is accompanied by defilements, has attributes of good deeds, and ripens in attachment. So this is good right thought, but this is still somebody who is a patugina. This is still somebody who, um, is still not awakened. And there is right thought that is noble, undefiled, transcendent, a factor of the path. What is right thought that is accompanied by defilements, has the attributes of good deeds, and ripens in attachment? Thoughts of renunciation, goodwill, and harmlessness. These are the three right thoughts, right intention. Renunciation here not meaning becoming a monastic. This means the thought, practice, and thoughts of letting go, of non-attachment. And what is right thought that is noble, undefiled, transcendent, a factor of the path? It's the thinking, the placing of the mind, thought, applying application, implanting of the mind, verbal processes in one of noble mind and undefiled mind, who possesses the noble path and develops the noble path. So this is somebody who has mastery over the mind, can get into jhanas, strong mindfulness, etc. That's what this is meaning. This is right thought that is noble. They make an effort to give up wrong thought and embrace right thought. That's the right effort. Mindfully, they give up wrong thought and take up right thought. That's their right mindfulness. So these three things keep running and circling around right thought, namely right view, right effort, and right mindfulness. In this context, right view comes first. And how does right view come first? When you understand wrong speech is wrong speech and right speech is right speech, that's your right view. And what is wrong speech? Speech that's false, divisive, harsh, or nonsensical. That last one, the Pali word being sampapalapa, which my preceptor Bante G is fond of saying that it's an onomatopoeia. Is you can say sampapalapa blah 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 blah. Yeah. And I also have adapted that because I think it's quite funny. Um, but these are the four wrong speeches: speech that divides people, speech that's harsh and abrasive, speech that's false, and speech that's useless or nonsensical. And what is right speech? Right speech is twofold, I say. Of course, we know these two folds already. We've seen these a couple times. There is right speech that is accompanied by defilements, has attributes of good deeds, and ripens in attachment. There is right speech that is noble, undefiled, transcendent, a factor of the path. Ah, hello, Sanchez. Welcome. Visaka's mind is doing its interesting thing. I didn't see anything about a savior being wrong. Yeah. All right. Let's continue on with the sutta, and after the we finish up the sutta because we're halfway. Sanchez has a question about generosity, and I will get to that question. Sanchez, good to see you. What is right speech that is accompanied by defilements, has an attributes of good deeds, and ripens in attachment? The refraining from lying, divisive speech, harsh speech, and talking nonsense. This is right speech that is accompanied by defilements. And what is right speech that is noble, undefiled, transcendent, a factor of the path? It's the desisting, abstaining, abstinence, refraining from 4 kinds of bad verbal deeds. And one of noble mind and undefiled mind, who possesses the noble path and develops the noble path. That is right speech, that is noble. So you have somebody, the first one is refraining from doing it, and the next one is desisting. So you're refraining from doing it. It's an active will. I'm actively trying to, use right speech. And then it's, well, I don't have to try anymore. I've desisted. I've stopped. All of my speech is right speech. Uh, this is right speech that is noble. They make an effort to give up wrong speech and embrace right speech. That's their right effort. Mindfully, they give up wrong speech and take up right speech. That's their right mindfulness. So these three things keep running and circling around right speech, namely, right view, right effort, and right mindfulness. In this context, right view comes first. And how does right view come first? When you understand wrong action is wrong action and right action is right action, that's your right view. And what is wrong action? Killing living creatures, stealing, and sexual misconduct. That is wrong action. And what is right action? Well, we know right action is twofold. There's right action accompanied by defilements and has attributes of good deeds and ripens in attachment. And there's right action that is noble, undefiled, transcendent, a factor of the path. What is right action? That is accompanied by defilements, has attributes of good deeds, and ripens in attachment. Refraining from killing living creatures, stealing, and sexual misconduct. Same words here. Refraining. This is right action that is accompanied by defilements. And what is right action that is noble, undefiled, transcendent, a factor of the path? It's desisting, abstaining, abstinence, and refraining from these three kinds of bad bodily conduct in one of noble mind and undefiled mind, who possesses the noble path and develops the noble path. This is right action that is noble. Visaka, what is your question about samma? Question about right. They make an effort to give up wrong action and embrace right action. That's their right effort. Mindfully, they give up wrong action and take up right action. That's their right mindfulness. So these three things keep running and circling around right action, namely right view, right effort, and right mindfulness. In this context, right view comes first. And how does right view come first? When you understand wrong livelihood is wrong livelihood and right livelihood is right livelihood, that's your right view. What is wrong livelihood? Ah, this is interesting. This is one of the few places where the Buddha actually gives a bit more of an explanation of what would be considered wrong livelihood. Um, this is, of course, mostly connected to monastics, but still, it's good. Uh, Deceit, flattery, hinting, right, and belittling, and using material possessions to chase after other material possessions. This is wrong livelihood. You might think, well, how is hinting for a layperson? People hint, people flatter. That's no. This is something you see often in terms of monastics and their livelihood. Right? One of the things that a monastic shouldn't really do is hint. That is not something seen as appropriate. But what is right livelihood? Right livelihood is twofold. I say we know what this is already. Livelihood accompanied by defilements ripens in attachment, and livelihood that is noble, undefiled, a factor of the path. What is right livelihood? That is accompanied by defilements It's when a noble disciple gives up wrong livelihood and earns a living by right livelihood. What is right livelihood that is noble, undefiled, transcendent, a factor of the path? It's the desisting, abstaining, abstinence, and refraining from wrong livelihood in one of noble mind and undefiled mind. Who possesses the noble path and develops the noble path. That is right livelihood. That is noble. They make an effort to give up wrong livelihood and embrace right livelihood. That's their right effort. Mindfully, they give up wrong livelihood and take up right livelihood. That's their right mindfulness. So these three things keep running and circling around right livelihood, namely right view, right effort, and right mindfulness. In this context, right view comes first. And how does right view come first? Right view gives rise to right thought. Right thought gives rise to right speech. Right speech gives rise to right action. Right action gives rise to right livelihood. Right livelihood gives rise to right effort. Right effort gives rise to right mindfulness. Right mindfulness gives rise to right immersion. Right immersion gives rise to right knowledge. And right knowledge gives rise to right freedom or right liberation. So this has become the noble tenfold path. Bhante Ji, you call this the upper middle path. You have the middle path, the eightfold path, and then the upper middle path. This is the tenfold path of somebody who has become awakened. So you have right knowledge and right liberation. Oh, here it is. So the trainee has 8 factors, while the perfected one has 10 factors. And here too, the eradication of many bad, unskillful qualities is fully developed due to right knowledge. In this context, right view comes first. And how does right view come first? So we pretty much understand by now that in every context, right view comes first. I don't know that there's a sutta where right view doesn't come first. I could be wrong. I mean, there's 5,000 pages of suttas, but I'm pretty sure, having read all of them at least once, I can be pretty confident in saying right view always comes first. And how does right view come first? For one of right view, wrong view is worn away. Nin the, Nijjana, Nijjinna, Nijjana, worn away or destroyed. I like that word. Nijjana, destroyed, worn away. And the many bad, unskillful qualities that arise because of wrong view are worn away. Because of right view, many skillful qualities. For one of right thought, wrong view is worn away. For one of right speech, wrong speech is worn away. For one of right action, wrong action is worn away. For one of right livelihood, wrong livelihood is worn away. For one of right effort, wrong effort is worn away. For one is right mindfulness, wrong mindfulness is worn away. For one of right immersion, wrong immersion, Mitya Samadhi, is worn away. As I mentioned, Bhante talking about, right? So when you see here in the suttas, there is such a thing as Mitya Samadhi. For one of right knowledge, wrong knowledge is worn away. For one of right freedom, wrong freedom is worn away. And the many bad, unskillful qualities that arise because of wrong freedom are worn away. And because of right freedom, many skillful qualities are fully developed. So there are 20 on the side of the skillful and 20 on the side of the unskillful. This exposition of the teaching on the Great 40 has been rolled forth, and it cannot be rolled back by any ascetic or Brahmin or God or Mara or Brahma or by anyone in the world. If any ascetic or Brahmin imagines they can criticize and reject the exposition on the teachings on the Great 40, they deserve rebuke, criticism on 10 legitimate grounds in the present life. If such a gentleman criticizes right view, they praise and honor ascetics and Brahmins who have wrong view. If they criticize right thought, speech, action, livelihood, effort, mindfulness, immersion, knowledge, freedom, they praise and honor ascetics and Brahmins who have wrong thought, speech, action, livelihood, effort, mindfulness, immersion, knowledge, and freedom. If any ascetic or Brahmin imagines they can criticize and reject the exposition on the teachings of Great 40, They deserve rebuke and criticism on these 10 legitimate grounds in the present life. Even those wanderers of the past, Asa and Banya and Ukkala, who taught the doctrines of no cause, inaction, and nihilism. So this is the Buddha saying even these people who have lots and lots of wrong view didn't imagine that the great 40 should be criticized or rejected. Why is that? For fear of blame, attack, and condemnation. That is what the Buddha said. Satisfied, the mendicants were happy with what the Buddha said. All right, sadhu. So we have come to 9 o'clock, and we have a few questions. Um, so I'm going to answer Visaka's question first because it's related to the sutta, and then we'll go into Sanchez's question about wrong speech. What if someone doesn't outwardly lie, but also doesn't disclose all facts, thereby creating an impression for another that is only partially accurate? Hmm. Well, the way the Buddha describes it is like you're brought in front of the headman of a village. Like there's a dispute or something like that. In modern days, you could say you're brought into court and you're asked, "Have you seen?" And lying, it would be having seen. You say, "I have not seen." So it's like you're deliberately, even though yes, you have, you're deliberately saying no. So it's a deliberate deception. Um, And that would kind of fall into a deliberate deception in a way, I would say. I is it as, like, straightforward? No, but I would say that that probably falls into a deliberate deception. That can get complicated, um, but what this also does is, it encourages the kind of lies that we accept to ourselves, right? Because this, you can, in doing what doesn't this, you don't disclose all the facts, thereby creating an impression for another that is only partially accurate. Not only do you set the impression for the other, but you also set that impression for yourself, and then you believe that impression, and then years later it comes up in your mind, and you have set the impression that is not fully true. So it's important to be as fully and straightforwardly and forthrightly honest as possible, um, so that you can to yourself and others, so that you can keep things straight and be skillful. So Sanchez's question is about generosity. Does it matter who you are generous to? As in, do we waste time with unworthy people when that time can be used for our practice? I find my sensuosity is often meet met meant with abuse of its generosity, not then other word. Oh, okay. Oh, not sensuosity. Because I was like, I don't think that's an interest. Is that maybe it is a word? Maybe there's an autocorrect. I find that my generosity is often met with abuse of it. Okay, I get, I get. Okay, um, so if it's done with good intentions, even giving to somebody who is not a good person is still of benefit to you. Now, the Buddha gives a whole list. The Buddha gives a whole list in one sutta, starting from a Buddha with all of the bhikkhus and bhikkhuni sangha together, going all the way down to animals. And this is obviously going through all the monastics, monastic things, and then good people, and then bad people, and then animals. And even giving to animals is good merit, is a good deed. Right? So if you're practicing, that never goes to waste. Um, if your generosity is being abused, depends on what you mean per se by abused. If people aren't really being grateful for it, well, that's on them, right? That doesn't impact your generosity. That doesn't lessen the good deed that you've done, right? That nothing that does not their reaction does not take away from what you have done. That's important to understand. Um, so I wouldn't let that deter me from practicing generosity. Let's see. The time could be used for our practice. Well, generosity is part of our practice. It's the first of the gradual path of practice. So generosity is not separate from the practice. It is part of the practice. That's something to always reflect on. I mean, you might make a kind of um, executive decision and say, hey, this is kind of a waste of time. Maybe what I want to give would be have better benefit for more people somewhere else. That's different. That's something that seems uh, possibly very helpful and worthy of doing. Um, but in general, it's probably not the skillful thing to kind of attach a lot of kind of conditionalities to your giving. The Buddha says to give like um, huge rain showers, showering down on the lowlands and the highlands. Whoever needs, you give. And so it's better to practice in that way, not necessarily worried about the reaction to that giving or who you're giving it to. You'll see some people it's in traditional Buddhist countries, you'll see that there is this kind of mindset of um, well, I'm only going to give to where my I get the most bang for the buck of my merit. And so this is why you'll see people give to monastics, right? They'll um, everybody will be quite poor, but they'll give to monastics because the Buddha does say that that is the highest merit. And why is it the highest merit? Not because of the monastics. It's because you're supporting the fourfold assembly, supporting the Dhamma staying alive. Right? So I would say that's the highest merit. Definitely supporting the fourfold assembly to stay alive and to stick around, and to be able to have the Dhamma available for people. That's a very worthy goal. So I think that's my response to that. All right. So we've come to the end of chat. It's 9:09. Why don't we do our meditation? And then after the meditation, we'll read a little Dhammapada and then we'll call it a night. So set your body up in whatever comfortable and stable position works for you. We'll start as always by scanning through the body, starting from the feet, moving up to the head, starting by placing our focus and attention on whatever sensation is arising in the feet, such as the feeling of the feet pressing against the floor or the cushion. Moving up through the ankles into the calves, up through to the knees and into the thighs. What's the feeling of the thighs pressing against the cushion, the chair? Up through to the hips and pelvis, observing how the position of the hips and pelvis impacts the bodily posture, both now and as we move up to the upper body. Move up the spine through the abdomen and the chest, checking that the spine is not leaning or slouching, or pulled straight like a rod. Your spine, ideally, should be resting comfortably in its neutral position with its natural curve. Moving up to the shoulders, checking that they're hanging loosely, not scrunched up and tight. Through to the elbows and hands, observing how the elbows and hands also impacts your posture. And finally up to the head, checking that the head is also not leaning and slouching. When you're done setting up your body in a comfortable and stable position, let the body go and take 3 deep breaths. And then let the breath go. From here on in, try not to manipulate or control the breath in any way. Body has been breathing from the moment you were born and will continue to do so until the second you die. Doesn't need you to do its job. Your job is to simply observe, investigate, and abide with the breath. Watch as the body breathes in, watch as it breathes out. As you're following your breath, your mind will become bored and will seek to run away to the past or the future, get lost in fantasies and stories, or an external distraction like a sound will arise and your mind will chase after it. Whenever this happens, you will lose your mindfulness, go away from the breath. But after a time, it will start to dawn on you that you have been taken away. That is when you come back to full focus and mindfulness. Acknowledge you've been taken away from the breath. And practice letting go of the distraction by neither getting agitated and pushing it away, nor by continuing to attach to it. Try to do your best to simply let it go, to let it be. Give it no attention, energy, and then return to the breath. Whenever you're distracted away, acknowledge, let go, and return. Acknowledge, let go, and return. Every once in a while, as you're following your breath, check in with the state of your mind. Your mind becoming more tranquil, calm, or not. As it does, you may begin to notice more subtle characteristics of the breath, how the breath is changing. Sometimes the breath is long and deep, sometimes short and shallow. Try to do your best to observe and investigate the changing nature of the breath as the body is breathing in and out. Slowly start to open your eyes, coming back to the room around. Reflecting on the state of your mind before the meditation and now, and any experiences you might have had. Why don't we do some Dhammapada and then close out? We are coming close to the end of the Dhammapada again. Not too close, but we're definitely getting there. On the Buddha. By what track can you trace the trackless Buddha of limitless range, whose victory nothing can undo, whom none of the vanquished defilements can ever pursue. By what track can you trace the trackless Buddha of limitless range, in whom exists no longer the entangling and embroiling craving that perpetuates becoming? Those wise ones who are devoted to meditation, who delight in the calm of renunciation, such mindful ones, supreme Buddhas, even the gods hold dear. Hard is it to be born a man. Hard is the life of mortals. Hard is it to gain the opportunity of hearing the sublime truth, and hard to encounter the arising of the Buddhas. To avoid all evil, to cultivate the good, and to cleanse one's mind. This is the teaching of all the Buddhas. Enduring patience is the highest austerity. Nibbana is supreme, say the Buddhas. He is not a true monk who harms another, nor a true renunciate who oppresses others. Not despising, not harming, restrained according to the monastic discipline, moderating in food, dwelling in solitude, devotion to meditation. This is the teaching of the Buddhas. There is no satisfying sensual desires, even with a rain of gold coins, for sensual pleasures gives little satisfaction and much pain. Having understood this, the wise man finds no delight even in heavenly pleasures. The disciple of the Supreme Buddha delights in the destruction of craving. Driven only by fear, do men go for refuge to many places, to hills, woods, groves, trees, and shrines. Such indeed is no safe refuge, such is not the refuge supreme. Not by resorting to such a refuge can one be freed from all suffering. He who has gone for refuge to the Buddha, the Dhamma, and the Sangha penetrates the transcendental wisdom of the Four Noble Truths. Suffering, the cause of suffering, the cessation of suffering, and the Noble Eightfold Path that leads to the cessation of suffering. This indeed is the safe refuge. This is the refuge supreme. Having gone to such a refuge, one is released from all suffering. Hard to find is the thoroughbred man, the Buddha. He is not born everywhere. Where such a wise man is born, that clan thrives happily. Blessed is the birth of the Buddhas. Blessed is the enunciation of the sacred teaching. Blessed is the harmony of the order. Blessed is the spiritual pursuit of the united truth seeker. He who reveres those worthy of reverence, the Buddhas and their disciples, who have transcended all obstacles and passed beyond the reach of sorrow and lamentation. He who reveres such peaceful and fearless ones, his merit none can compute by any measure. This next one is short, and it's one of my favorite parts of the Dhammapada. So let's finish this out. Happiness. Happy indeed we live, friendly amidst the hostile. Amidst hostile men we dwell free from hatred. Happy indeed we live, friendly amidst the afflicted by craving. Amidst afflicted men we dwell free from affliction. Happy indeed we live, free from avarice, amidst the avaricious. Amidst avaricious men we dwell free from avarice. This is one of my favorite lines in all of the suttas. As I reflect on this so often, is what I wish to be. Happy indeed we live, we who possess nothing. Feeders on joy we shall be, like the radiant gods. I love that line. Happy in possessing nothing. feeders on joy. Victory begets enmity. The defeated dwell in pain. Happily, the peaceful live, discarding both victory and defeat. There is no fire like lust and no crime like hatred. There is no ill like the aggregates, and no bliss higher than the peace of Nibbana. Hunger is the worst disease, conditioned things the worst suffering. Knowing this as it really is, the wise realize Nibbana, the highest bliss. Health is the most precious gain, and contentment the greatest wealth. A trustworthy person is the best kinsman. Nibbana is the highest bliss. Having savored the taste of solitude and peace, pain-free and stainless he becomes, drinking deep the taste of the bliss of truth. Good is it to see the noble ones, to live with them is ever blissful. One will always be happy by not encountering fools. Indeed, he who moves in the company of fools grieves for longing. Association with fools is ever painful, like partnership with an enemy. But association with the wise is happy, like meeting one's own kinsman. Therefore, follow the noble one who is steadfast, wise, learned, dutiful, and devout. One should follow only such a man, who is truly good and discerning, even as the moon follows the path of the stars. All right, friends. I think it's time to call it a night as we do our final business in sharing of merit. Let me break out the banners. So, if you are watching this for the first time and you'd like to find out more information about myself and the organization, Maggaseka, you can go to the website scrolling at the bottom of the screen, maggaseka.org, maggaseka.org. There you can find anytime I post about a stream coming up, an article written, an upcoming retreat, any activity that I do, you can find there. The top right hand corner of that website, you can put your email and you will get an email every time, so you can get notified. Same thing with YouTube. You can click the subscribe, click the bell, and you will get an email. We also have our Maggaseka Discord community, which is a community that focuses both in study and practice on the early Buddhist texts, the suttas, as we have read tonight. If that is something that's interesting to you, a community that is focused on this, you can send an email to the email list listed on the screen, maggaseka@gmail.com, and ask for an invite to the Discord, which we will then send you. So in terms of regular weekly activities, we have Monday night Dhammapaloozas, as we're just finishing, 8 p.m. New York time. We have, if you're on Insight Timer, every Saturday at 3 p.m. New York time, I do an Insight Timer session for an hour and a half, Dhamma teaching, meditation, and Q&A. And we also have our weekly sutta reading Sunday nights on our Discord program, Discord community. You're welcome to join that if you do join the community. And I think that's good enough for now. So why don't we share our merit? All right. There we go. Dukkha patta chane dukkha, bhaya patta chane bhaya, soka patta chane soka, hantu sabbe pipaniyo, etavata cha mehi sampadang punya sampadang, sabbe deva anumodantu sabba sampatti siddhya, akasatta jabumata deva naga mahindika, punyang tang anumoditva charang rakantu sasanang. May the suffering ones be suffering free, and the fear-struck fearless be. May the grieving shed all grief, and may all beings find relief. May all beings share this merit that we've thus acquired for the acquisition of all kinds of happiness. May beings inhabiting space and earth, devas, nagas, and yakas of mighty power, share in this merit of ours. May they long protect the Buddha's dispensation. Sadhu, sadhu, sadhu. Okay, friends, that is another Dhammapalooza in the books. Sukhi Hotu, which means may you be well and at ease. Practice well and be well. May you have a spiritually successful and peaceful practice until we meet again. And once again, those of you who have been looking forward to Morning Monastery Experience coming back soon, in just a couple of weeks, it will come back. Have a good week.